Boldwood presents The Golden Oldies Book Club, written by Judy Leigh and read by Phillida Nash. The moral right of the author has been asserted. This performance is owned by Boldwood. The cider seasons. Apple blossom time. Prologue. Apples have been part of my life since I was at my mother's knee. A is for apple, an apple for the teacher. I was an only child, the apple of my mother's eye, my wonderful, sweet, funny mum who made apple pie and apple jelly and told me that I was the apple that didn't fall far from the tree. My father owned Sharrock Cider Farm, my grandfather too, and my great-grandfather before him. When my father passed away, my husband Peter and I ran it together. Then Pete met Gail, and they moved to Spain. I became a Sharrock again, and ran the cider farm by myself, hoping that my son Wesley would show an interest. He was his father's boy. He liked an occasional drink of cider, but he wasn't interested in it before it reached the bottle. Then, years later, Wes upset the apple cart and left to join his father, while his teenage children stayed with me to finish their studies. I was the only apple left in the barrel. But Sharrock cider ran in my veins, and I kept the farm going, with help from wonderful friends. Now I sit in the orchard, as the delicate pink blossom tumbles from the branches, inhaling the sweet, sharp scent of apple juice, and I wonder whether I should think about making this my last year running the farm. Perhaps it's time for someone else to take over. But there's an old saying, an apple a day keeps the doctor away, and I'm lucky to be healthy and able-bodied. Every day of my life has been about apples, growing them, harvesting them, fermenting the juice. As each season changes at Sharrock's, I can't help but look forward to the next one. Each time of year has its own temporary beauty. That's how life goes by, and, almost without realizing it, I'm 72, and the years have flown. Now here I am, not knowing what else to do but keep on doing what I've always done. I don't know anything else. I can't grumble. Chapter 1. Jeannie Sharrock wandered through the orchard along the grassy path and stopped abruptly, closing her eyes. Her nostrils were filled with the scent of delicate petals, a hint of sharp apple. There was no one around. The farm didn't come alive for another hour. The sun had barely risen. Jeannie loved this time of day, this time of year. A pink blush sunrise in late April, crammed with hope and promise. She leaned against the bark of a tree, not caring that the tops of her boots were wet and stuck with zigzag blades of grass. The blossom above bunched in small clusters, delicate white flowers like tiny open palms, dots of pink and yellow at the centre. The bees would be here soon, busily fizzing and hovering around the blossoms, a steady, happy hum before whirling away on transparent wings. Thin dawn sunlight filtered through the branches, warming Jeannie's face. It was good to be alone in the orchard, with the blossom drooping overhead, petals light as crepe paper. There was something in the scent of fresh apple blossom that reminded Jeannie of new life. A bloom tumbled down light as a sigh, brushing Jeannie's cheek, and she understood immediately why she felt so happy. An apple-fresh, zingy year began every April with the blossom and ended with pruning back the trees in January. Then there was just the quiet reflecting about life and solitude, sitting by the leaping fire in the dark winter evenings until the creamy flowers bloomed again. Jeannie pushed her hands into the pockets of her anorak and headed back towards the farmhouse, her feet squelching damp grass. She'd go into the kitchen, set the kettle on the range and start breakfast. Then the noise would begin, a bubbling eruption of activity that would shatter her quiet thoughts. The grandchildren rushing downstairs, her mother settling in her seat, dictating what she needed from high on the throne. Jeannie sighed. The precious moments in the orchard helped her to stay sane, to feel calm. Besides, it was her farm. She had run the business for the last 50 years. She'd had help from a half-interested husband for a while, and Barney Knowles was the best farm manager in the world. Ivan and Stuart, the men who worked the land on tractors, picked the apples, brewed and bottled the cider, and Aurora ran the shop and cafe. In the summer, she'd have help from her grandchildren, the twins. It was a comfortable family business. Everyone was happy. She wasn't doing a bad job. Jeannie stepped into the boot room, tugging off damp Wellingtons plastered with wet grass, padding in socks that hugged the bottom of her jeans. The kitchen was warm as ever, the old Aga belting out dry, comforting heat. She went through the same mechanical moves that she repeated every day, filling a kettle, slicing bread for toast, reaching for cereal boxes and milk, lifting the iron skillet for the eggs. Then she glanced up at the small woman who hovered in the corner. Whenever she saw her mother watching her, Jeannie was filled with a mixture of affection and anticipation, always for the same reasons. Affection, because her mother, despite her 95 years, was feisty and stubborn. She refused to give way to the ailments that plagued her, high blood pressure, arthritis. Affection, because her mother was warm, funny, kindly, and fiercely loyal. And anticipation, because any moment now the jokes would start. "Good morning, Mum." Jeannie passed a hand through the white fringe that hung over her eyes as she bent over the frying eggs. "Tea? An egg on toast?" "Did you hear about the egg that wasn't sure if God existed?" Violet asked chirpily. "He was agnostic." Violet's jokes came from boredom, an active mind, and a sense of mischief. She had little else to occupy her now, and the jokes were said to provoke a reaction. She shuffled forwards, a furtive, mischievous elf, edging along steadily, as if concealing a magic wand behind her back. She had that cunning expression she often used when she was about to launch a small bombshell. She said, "You're looking peaky today, Jeannie." Jeannie poured tea into a china cup. "I'm fine, Mum." "When are you getting your hair cut?" "I thought I'd grow it," Jeannie countered with a grin. "Grow your hair? You're 73 years old. You should have it short and sensible." 72, and I'm sensible enough." Jeannie patted the coils fastened to her head with a clip, teasing back the strands. "Oh, my aching bones! My legs twin something terrible." Violet eased herself into a chair and reached for the cup. Jeannie noticed her fingers shook with the effort of lifting it. She took a sip. "It's hot." "Just drink it carefully, Mum," Jeannie said anxiously. Violet smiled mischievously. "Why do Marxists drink herbal tea?" "Because proper tea is theft." Jeannie rolled her eyes. Her mother had a joke for every occasion. Violet leaned back and closed her eyes, the lids paper-thin, networked with light blue veins. "I wonder if the good Lord will take me off this year. It's about time he laid me to rest alongside dear Stanley." "You're good for a few years yet," Jeannie soothed. "Stanley was a wonderful man," Violet observed. "He liked his cider a bit too much, but your father was a wise businessman. I thought the cider farm would go to the wall when he passed on, but you've made it your own. You've done very well, considering." Jeannie knew that a compliment usually meant that the opposite would follow immediately afterwards. Violet pursed her lips. Here it came. I told you it wouldn't last when you married Peter Yarcombe. He had a roving eye, that one. Not that he was much to look at himself, mind. Pete's in the past. I'm a Sharrock again, and that's how it's staying, Jeannie said, placing a plate in front of Violet. A neat egg sat in the middle of a piece of buttered toast. Oh, I can't eat all that, Jeannie. Violet lifted her knife and fork and tucked in. Yes, Peter's living it up in Spain, and so's your son now. Wesley's no better than his father, leaving those kids here with you. Jeannie shook her head. Pete retired with Gail. I was glad to see them go. It was different with Wes. He and Sheila went there to start a business. The twins wanted to stay here because of school. I agreed they could until they'd finished their A-levels. Violet huffed. You're saddled with the pair of them until then. And why are they still at school? I mean, at least Ella's bright. She's got a brain. She's sensible. But Caleb? Why on earth would a 17-year-old boy want to study drama? He's very talented. Violet cleared her plate. And why photography? He should take some pictures of rosy cider apples for your new website. Whatever a website is. She gazed up as Jeannie lifted her plate. Nice egg that, Jeannie. Not too runny. I always said you cook a good egg. Jeannie was tempted to kiss her mum's cheek, soft, crumpled with furrows. Instead, she said, Do you want another piece of toast? Oh, yes. I have to have more toast, Jeannie. I'm lactose intolerant, Violet sniggered. One piece or two? None at all. Violet opened her eyes wide. I'm 95. I've lost my appetite. She lifted a stiff hand. Another cup of tea would be nice, though. You make the best tea, strong, just the right amount of milk. Jeannie brought the teapot over and began to pour into Violet's cup. She thought briefly about her morning walk in the orchard, the calm peacefulness, sunlight filtering through leaves and the sweet scent of the blossom. Then Violet broke the silence. You should have married again. Jeannie gave a single laugh. It was not the first time Violet had made this remark. She'd made it just a week ago, and the one before. I've had offers, Mum, Jeannie replied crisply. I have offers every January during the wassailing. Lots of men drink too much and ask me to marry them. The idea of a woman who owns a cider farm is a bit of a temptation after a few jars, but that's not really a compliment. I suppose it's too late now you're old, Violet snorted. You should have married Barney. He knows the meaning of hard graft. He's been here since he was 15. That must be 60 years ago. 57 years ago. He's the same age as I am. We were in the same class at school. Jeannie suddenly remembered that she had toast on her plate and lifted the slice to nibble. Barney's marvellous. I don't know what I'd do without him. But he's not the marrying type. He's very set in his ways. His father, Jerome, was just like him, loyal to a fault. He worked here all his life, just like his son, but he didn't make it to retirement age. He had a weak heart, high blood pressure. Violet turned glittering eyes towards Jeannie. Barney should retire before he keels over in his tracks. You should do the same. I never think about retiring, unless you bring it up, Jeannie lied. Sharrock's cider has been a huge part of this village for generations. Well, it's the end of the line now, Violet said. Drama and photography, indeed. No one ever ran a farm by learning how to prance about on a stage taking photos. Jeannie glanced towards the stairs as footsteps hammered with increasing volume like drumbeats. Caleb Yarcombe appeared in the room, tall, slim, a floppy fringe over his eyes. He glanced towards the table. Any fried eggs, Grandma? Morning, great-grandma. He sat down. Ella's in the shower. She'll be ages. He rubbed his hands together. First day back after the Easter break, and we're studying Accidental Death of an Anarchist. It's just about the best play in the world. It's about nailing the fascists. I'm playing the maniac. Violet grunted. Anarchists, fascists, maniacs. You should be going to school to learn about rules, young man, not how to break them. Caleb took her hand and brought it to his lips, a sweeping, courtly gesture. You went to school in the Dark Ages, great-grandma. It was all about keeping people in their place in those days. Sewing, knitting, the 3 R's. At least we learned some basic skills, Violet retorted. Then she added, not too quietly, and manners. Yes, but we are thinkers. We are Generation Z, the intellectuals, the ones who will change the world, save the planet. The planet definitely needs saving, Violet agreed, lifting her cup and supping noisily. All these Sputniks that cause pollution, and the cars and lorries, computers and mobile phones and such like. It wasn't like that in my day. Caleb dived into the plate of eggs and toast Jeannie had set in front of him. In your day, it was still horse-drawn carriages and, thanks, Grandma, and Oliver Twist and the exploitation of the poor. Were you a suffragette, great-grandma? I mean, in those days, society was patriarchal. Women were just drudges exploited by men. They just cooked and sewed and had babies. Really? Violet gave a loud shriek of triumph. And who just cooked your breakfast, young man? Who exploited your poor grandma to make your eggs and toast? Ah, you have a point. Caleb raised a finger in the air. Lovely breakfast this, Grandma. You're welcome, Caleb. Jeannie ruffled his hair. You help me out at the weekend, so I don't mind doing breakfast for you and Ella. I haven't got time for breakfast. A light voice came from the top of the stairs. Then Ella whirled into the room, long hair damp from the shower, her jacket already on over her jeans and sweatshirt, a large school bag on her back. She had the same bright blue eyes, the same light hair as her brother, and she moved in exactly the same way, impatient, irrepressible. I'll be late if I don't go now. You must have time for a bowl of cereal at least, Jeannie protested. The police found a dead man in a bowl of milk, Violet offered. They suspect a serial killer. Oh, Mum, Jeannie groaned. I'm meeting a friend in Combe Pomeroy. Ella was almost at the door, her movements furtive. I'll have something when I'm in school. I promised I'd help someone out with maths homework. Maths, Violet agreed. Now, there's a sensible subject. Caleb laughed. All right, great-grandma, point taken. Hang on, Ella, I'll come with you. We can walk down together. He wiped his mouth and pushed back his chair with a loud scrape, lunging athletically for his jacket and school bag. Thanks for breakfast, Grandma. See you later. Love you. And he twisted away through the open door, pushing it behind him with a dull thud, and was gone. Violet closed her eyes. Why ever did you agree to take the twins on? We're too old for teenagers. They are family. Jeannie reached for the piece of cold toast on her plate. And they are lovely. Besides, their parents are in Spain and their school is here. We'll have to put up with them for over another year. Then I expect they'll be off to the sunshine in Spain with Wesley, Violet said. Or university, Jeannie suggested, in the UK. Doing drama, Violet repeated, exasperated. I just don't understand the kids today. Jeannie pressed a light hand on her mother's shoulder. Shall we have a cup of tea? I'll make a fresh pot. We deserve it. We do, Violet agreed. Then I'm going to sit in the conservatory and read my book. It's a good thriller. What's on your agenda? Lots of work on the farm. We have 1,000 gallons of vintage cider stored in the oak vats that needs bottling. Jeannie said. "This evening I'm popping into Combe Pomeroy to the library reading group." "The reading group?" Violet gasped. "With Ruth Bartley running it as and when she feels like it. That woman would run the entire village if she was allowed to. That's the problem with small, skinny people. They're bossy little dictators." Jeannie glanced at her tiny, slender mother and smiled. She poured freshly brewed tea into her empty cup. "Here, Mum, get your tyrannical hands around that." Violet reached for the tea, froze in mid-air, and met her daughter's eyes. "Ah, so that's how today's going," she gave a gleeful laugh. "And what book is taking centre stage at the reading group this evening?" "Tess of the D'Urbervilles." Jeannie sat down for the first time, slumping into the chair. "Ruth's choice. We're going to discuss a classic Hardy." "That's all about West Country village life. Sex, overworked women and randy men," Violet laughed. "Perfect for Combe Pomeroy. There's villages full of them." She was suddenly delighted. "Here's a joke for you. I keep shouting out cauliflower and broccoli. Do you think I have Florette syndrome?" Jeannie shook her head and lifted her cup to her lips. There was an abrupt knock at the back door, and both women turned as it opened slowly. A thick-set man in a heavy overcoat and well-worn Wellingtons stood in the doorway, his arms folded. A thatch of grey hair ended in wiry whiskers on his cheeks. "Morning, Jeannie," he offered a toothy smile. "I was just about to get started on the bottling. Only—" "Hello, Barney." Jeannie smiled, rising from the seat on her way towards the frying pan. "Only what?" Violet thrust her chin out provocatively. "Only there's some hedging to do today as well, and that's hungry work." Barney chuckled as he leaned against the doorpost. He watched Jeannie lean against the Aga, eggs ready, heavy pan in her hands. "The smell of that fried breakfast is lovely. I wouldn't mind a swift plate before I set to." Chapter 2. Aurora Perry revved the engine of her red Escort convertible just because she could. The lioness roar growled in her ears and made her smile. The car and driver were purring as one. She tugged hard on the handbrake, parking at an angle on the gravel, and glanced into the driver's mirror. A curly-haired woman who looked to be in her early 70s, or late 60s, possibly even her early 60s, met her eyes confidently, her lipstick subtle, her silk scarf at her throat. She practiced a "What can I do to make your day perfect?" smile, ready for work. She stepped out, her tie-dyed skirt whirling around her ankles, and hitched her mirror-work bag onto her shoulder, sashaying past the sign that proclaimed Sharrock's, the home of Somerset's best cider, towards the shop, pulling the huge keyring from her bag. A sign above her head read, "The Hardcore Cafe and Gift Shop." It was 10 minutes past 10. She was late again. Inside the shop, Aurora filled the urn with water and switched it on. She lined up a large silver teapot, mugs, tea bags, instant coffee, sugar cubes, double-checking that there was milk in the little fridge. Then she moved to the area that sold gifts, mugs, coasters, bottle openers, fridge magnets, postcards, little teddy bears with Sharrock cider embroidered across the top of blue overalls. Twinkling fairy lights winked against the rough walls of the old barn. Shelves of bottles and gift packs of cider, T-shirts that claimed that apples are best drunk. 3 wooden tables had been set out, each with small glass holders for tea lights and a posy of pretty flowers, all her handiwork. The Hardcore Cafe and Gift Shop was her domain. She'd even chosen the name. To that end, Aurora moved to the CD player and pressed play. "Gimme Shelter" oozed from the speakers, and Aurora smiled, jiggling her hips. She knew that the Rolling Stones wasn't the best choice of music for the ambience of the gift shop, but Aurora had a soft spot for Mick Jagger. In fact, she had a fondness for all ageing rock stars, for the burned-out, sinewy-in-leather look, sunglasses, a craggy face and lean jaw. She raised her arms, twirling one way and then the other. She loved to dance, just as she danced at the Isle of Wight Pop Festival in 1968. 18 years old, free as a bird, shaking her hips and her hair with complete abandon. Aurora sighed. Those were the best days of her life. Time had changed everything far too much. The urn began to push steam from beneath the lid, making it rattle, and Aurora turned the dial to low. April was usually a quiet month, the last quiet one before the summer throngs arrived. Customers often came in large numbers or not at all. A coachload of tourists had stopped one Saturday afternoon last month, and she had been rushed off her feet, but Jeannie had popped in to help. Most customers were passers-by, people on their way through the village to somewhere else. Aurora picked up a feather duster and began to tickle the wooden counter, although there was no dust. She preferred visitors who came from a long way away, those with an accent from Birmingham or Manchester. Aurora would say, "You're a long way from home, stranger," and there would be banter about how different their home was from sleepy Somerset. But those sorts of people usually came between May and September, or they'd visit for the tour days when Jeannie would take groups of people around the orchards for cider tasting. Aurora loved the tours, the babbling questions about village life. But today there would only be locals who'd stop for a coffee. Aurora didn't mind. She liked to chat. It was 10:30. She examined her fingernails, painted a calming shade of turquoise, and rattled the silver bangles on her arm. She liked the way they chimed to herald her arrival, telling everyone that she was on her way to a table with a cup of coffee and a slice of cake. Mick Jagger was singing "You Can't Always Get What You Want," and Aurora sang along in a faltering voice, her mind drifting back in time to the days when she'd been young and in love, or older and fleetingly entangled with someone else. She repeated the words, the same line over again. You can't always get what you want. Wasn't that the truth? The doorbell chimed, and a young woman rushed in, smart in a dark suit. Aurora waved a hand. "Danielle, lovely to see you. Coffee? Cake?" "Tea and sympathy," the woman replied, her face troubled. "My next viewing isn't until 12. I'm showing someone around Hazelwood House. I need a break first." "Sit down," Aurora said. Danielle Childs was neat, tidy, perfectly groomed, but her shoulders slumped and her eyes were the dead eyes of a gutted fish. It could only mean one thing. Her husband's infidelity had reared its head yet again. "So, how's life? Has Scott been up to his old tricks?" "It's worse than ever. Scott's had his last chance." Danielle sniffed and reached in her pocket for a tissue. "I've thrown him out. He's seeing someone else. My marriage is over for good." "That's awful. You poor love." Aurora poured hot water onto a tea bag, her face soft with compassion. "How will you cope at work? You share an office." "I won't speak to him. I'm avoiding him like the plague." Danielle gazed up gratefully as Aurora placed a mug of tea in front of her. "We're partners in name only now. I don't want any more to do with him. Ever." Aurora clucked sympathetically. "You know he can't keep it in his trousers, Danielle. He's a serial cheat." "You told me that the last time and I didn't listen." Danielle snuffled. "I wondered why the same woman kept coming into the office, asking to view houses, insisting Scott met her there. Danielle put the tissue to her cheek, wiping away a tear. My gut told me something was going on. Then he spent evenings away on business, coming home with the smell of Chanel No. 5 on his shirt. Danielle swallowed a sob. I hate him. He's a cheating pig. Aurora seated herself in the opposite chair. You're worth so much more. Scott is past history now. I know. It's over. This time I'm sure. Danielle accepted the hand Aurora held out. Why do men let us down, Aurora? Because we let them. Aurora's eyes gleamed. But we can choose not to. I won't have my heart broken again ever. Is that why you're single? Still single at 72, Aurora laughed. I have plenty of admirers. At my salsa group, partners can't keep up with me. I swap every 2 dances and go on to another. And that's the way I like it now. I want to be worshipped, not taken for granted. I'm done with men. Danielle's eyes shone with tears and admiration. You're so wise. I'm going to be exactly like you. I won't give my heart away again. You're made of strong stuff, Danielle. Aurora squeezed the hand again. You'll be fine in time. She pointed to the mug. Would you like a refill? Oh, yes, please, Danielle said gratefully. And another small piece of that cake. Then I'll get off to Hazelwood House to show the prospective buyer around. Do I look all right? $1 million. Aurora cut another slab and placed it on Danielle's plate. Good. Danielle patted her dark hair. Because Hazelwood is on for a lot more than that, and it's been on the market for almost a year. Making a sale today would cheer me up. Aurora poured tea into Danielle's cup and filled one for herself. I'll drink to that, she said, raising an eyebrow. Put yourself first. Today's pain is tomorrow's power. Most men are a waste of space. That's my motto. Danielle nodded eagerly. That's 3 mottos, but I'm not going to argue. From now on, I'm out for myself. Go, girl, Aurora agreed at the exact moment that Mick Jagger began to sing I Can't Get No Satisfaction. Aurora threw back her head and joined in with the words. Danielle crumpled her tissue in her fist and dabbed at her eyes again. Aurora was counting the day's takings. The shop was closed now. Jeannie appeared in the doorway, a smile on her face. How's it all been? Not bad. Aurora looked up. A truck driver called in on his way to Sunderland. I couldn't get rid of him, she smiled. He suggested that we steal all the cider from this place and go on the run together, just like Bonnie and Clyde. Jeannie grinned. How old was he? 40s, probably. Oh, too young, even for me, and not my type. Too broad, too sweaty. Aurora sighed. But flirting is always a blast. My cider's safe for today, then, Jeannie joked. Had he been a rock guitarist, you'd have cleared off with all the money in the till. Aurora shook her head. My days of impetuous flings are over. She handed Jeannie the bags of money. Danielle was in here. Scott's been playing away again. I think their marriage is finally over. It was always going to happen. He loves himself more than he loves Danielle, and she's far too good for him. Jeannie folded her arms. Is she coming to the reading group tonight? You'll be there, won't you? I wouldn't miss it for the world. Aurora leaned forward on the counter. 2 hours of arguing about Tess of the D'Urbervilles? Wonderful. Oh, Sparks will definitely fly again, Jeannie agreed. Ruth is going to have to control the baying mob, especially if the Wheatcrofts get going. They wouldn't miss the chance of a public standoff. Aurora pressed her lips together. Mark Wheatcroft thinks he knows everything, and Verity will disagree with him. Last time I thought they'd come to blows. I only go for the entertainment. I go for the company, the tea and biscuits, Jeannie breathed. And a break from my mother. I love her to bits, but I'm worn out with the jokes. I've been bottling cider all day with Barney. Then I spent an hour doing accounts. I popped upstairs to change the twins' bedding. You changed their bedding? Aurora gasped. They are 17. I should get them to do it themselves, but honestly, it seems easier just to do it than have a huge argument. And Mum was following me round the house saying, Jeannie, did you hear what happened to the Italian chef on TV? He passed away. She told me that 3 times, and in the most ridiculous accent. Bless her, Aurora tutted. She's a good age now, your mum. She's 95, but she still knows how to wind me up. It's her only form of entertainment. This morning she said that I should have got married again. Marriage is overrated. Poor Danielle would agree, although she's only 30-something. Plenty of time for her to make the same mistake again. And again. Aurora turned off the urn and reached for her jacket. Right, I'm done here. I'll see you tonight at the library for the punch-up over Tess. You're a gem. Jeannie hugged her and pushed the money bags into her anorak pockets. She stepped outside, strolling back towards the farmhouse. The tangy fragrance of flowers, the hint of sharp, juicy apples, drifted towards her, and she felt herself tugged in the direction of the orchard. Jeannie walked through the long avenue of trees, reaching up a finger and touching the creamy flowers. With trees on either side, Jeannie felt as though she were strolling through a guard of honour, like a bride showered with tumbling confetti. She recalled her mother's words and Aurora's, one advocating marriage, one against. Marriage to Peter Yarcombe hadn't worked out well for her, or for poor Danielle to Scott, but she was still young. It was too late now for Jeannie. A few petals fell, delicate snowflakes from the branches twirling in the air, scattering on the grass. The sun was already sinking in the distance, streaking the sky burnt orange and indigo. The night air was sharp with new beginnings, the tang of apples not yet formed. A clock chimed in the distance, a single heavy note carried on the air from the clock tower, a brick building on the courtyard. It was 6:15. It was time to cook supper and face the throng again. Chapter 3. The library reading room in Combe Pomeroy was dark and poky. Only 3 light bulbs worked in the ancient chandelier. Ruth Barclay had removed 2 tables, placed 8 chairs in a circle on the wooden floorboards, dragging a 9th, trying to make the space feel less cramped. People's elbows would touch, but it would be intimate. Ruth wasn't sure that was a good thing. Last month's meeting, a discussion of The Handmaid's Tale, had ended badly, when Mark Wheatcroft had suggested that enforced childbirth, with a perfect donor, was an honour for women. His wife had been furious, telling him that the men in the book had their own way too much, as most men did in real life. Ruth had felt as if she were refereeing a boxing match. Choosing Tess as the book of April was, she hoped, a nice gentle classic everyone would enjoy. She rearranged the chairs again. Perhaps the Wheatcrofts would not come. Perhaps someone new would arrive, a fresh face with a sensible opinion that would not start a war. Ruth placed biscuits on a plate. She laid out the whole packet, sweet digestives, hoping that the evening would be sweet. She'd make everyone tea in the little adjoining kitchen later, although last time Aurora had suggested that a swift brandy might be more appropriate after the argument about the handmaids. Ruth stared down at her sensible shoes. She adjusted the dark framed glasses on her nose and smoothed neat grey hair. She'd hoped life would be quieter once she'd retired from her busy job as an admissions officer at a university, but since she'd arrived at Combe Pomeroy 8 years ago, she'd been persuaded to take on all the responsibilities that no one else wanted. She opened the library 3 days in the week and on Saturday mornings. She organised the reading group. She was even the head of the twinning committee with Pluminet in Brittany because she had a little French, although no one had apparently spoken to anyone across the channel in years. There was a ruffle of skirts, and Aurora was in the room, smelling of ylang-ylang. Ruth immediately felt underdressed. No, the word was dowdy. Aurora exuded confidence and panache. Ruth crept into her room, mouse-like and invisible. It had always been that way. It was unlikely to change now. "Ruth, what can I do to help?" Aurora offered. "Shall I move these chairs? They are a bit cramped." She immediately began to scrape chair legs against the polished wooden floor. "Do you think there are too many places?" "Oh, I hope there will be a good turnout." Ruth nibbled a snagged nail. "I'm here," Aurora announced, "and Jeannie's coming, and Danielle." She lowered her voice. "Danielle has finally kicked Scott out." "Scott sold me my house when I first moved here," Ruth confided. "I thought he was a flirt, and no one flirts with me, ever." "He's a slimy charmer," Aurora said. "I don't suppose you brought any brandy, Ruth, to improve the ambience." "Oh, should I have?" Ruth asked anxiously. Aurora laughed, and Ruth became flustered. "I never know when people are joking. I find it so hard to interpret social signals. Now I'm feeling ridiculously embarrassed because I didn't bring alcohol. But honestly, I think we need a license." "Ruth, darling," Aurora hugged her, and Ruth pulled a face, tensing every muscle. "We'll all have a splendid time tonight." "I hope so." Ruth was unsure. Aurora made a face and whispered, "As long as Mark keeps his mouth shut." Footsteps heralded another arrival. Jeannie came in, followed by Danielle. Aurora hugged everyone energetically. "I almost didn't come." Danielle's eyes were red and swollen. "I just felt a bit awful." Jeannie wrapped a protective arm around Danielle's shoulders. "I'm glad you were here. We'll cheer you up." "What about Hazelwood House? Did someone buy it?" Aurora asked excitedly. "No luck there either." Danielle shook her head. "The man who was coming to look around was too busy today, apparently." Her face crumpled. "Nothing is going right for me." Ruth thrust the plate of biscuits under Danielle's nose, her arms straight and awkward. "Would a digestive help?" Danielle nodded. Then she took a biscuit. "Oh, I feel so terrible. Everyone knows." "I remember only too well how dreadful it feels." Jeannie hugged her again. "When Pete started his affair with Gail, I was the last one to find out. I promise you, it gets better with time." "But I'm all alone." "Being alone opens so many wonderful doors," Aurora chimed. "Doesn't it, Ruth?" Ruth was thoughtful. The doors she usually opened led to responsibility and extra work. She wasn't at all sure she wanted to enter the current door that was flung wide in front of her, the evening's reading group. "I don't really know." "It's 8 o'clock, Aurora said smartly. "Shall we start before the trouble arrives?" "Just the 4 of us?" Ruth glanced nervously at the door. "All right." Jeannie sat down. "I don't mind. It's good to be here with friends. At least it will be a sociable evening, with no heated arguments." "I just need the distraction," Danielle sniffed. taking the seat next to Jeannie, who patted her shoulder. Of course. Right. Ruth sat down and adjusted her black-framed glasses. So, Tess of the D'Urbervilles. Hardy says she's a pure woman. Aurora laughed. I love that as my title. Imagine, Aurora Perry, a pure woman. Jeannie winked. Not in a million years. So, Ruth tried again. Why do we think Thomas Hardy calls her a pure... I think a better title would be a pure victim. A clear voice boomed from the doorway. The women looked up as a smartly groomed man in a dark jacket and chinos lifted a hand, the open palm a signal to stop everyone else talking. You're discussing Tess, I assume. Shall we sit down before we rip her to shreds, Mark? The woman at his elbow was tall and elegant, in a designer jacket and jeans. She smiled warmly. You started. Are we late? No, not at all, Ruth began. We are keen, Aurora interrupted. We started without you. Mark and Verity Wheatcroft plonked themselves down firmly on the hard chairs. He leaned back in his seat, draping an arm around his wife. She crossed neat legs, producing a pristine copy of a novel with a primitive painting of a tree and a sky on the front. So, Tess, a pure woman? Ruth asked again, looking nervously at Mark. Let me tell you exactly why Tess is a hopeless case, Mark said, lifting a finger. Half an hour later, the arguments had heated up, and he was still holding forth about women's inferiority to men. Ruth wished she hadn't mentioned the theme of purity. Verity was losing her temper. Mark, you surely can't believe this rubbish you're spouting. Hardy shows that Tess is an uneducated woman and her sole purpose is to serve men. Mark smiled at everyone to show that he knew what he was talking about. Tess can't do anything except follow orders. She's a tragic heroine, Aurora shook her fist. She should have stood up to the men long before the end of the book. But she's only an uneducated woman, Mark insisted. She can't function without a man. She turns to Alec, then to Angel, because she's weak. And they both let her down because they are pigs, Danielle said bitterly through clenched teeth. All men are pigs. Mark was persistent. She needs the strength of Alec d'Urberville, Angel Clare. A fat lot of good Angel was to her, Jeannie snorted. He left her when he should have stayed to help. Most men let women down, in my experience, Danielle huffed. Pigs. Ruth looked around, her expression troubled. Well, I don't really know. You're missing the point. Verity wagged a finger. Women like Tess are milkmaids. They are mistresses. They are the flotsam and jetsam of men's whims, and quite frankly, everyone else in the book is to blame for what happens to her, not Tess herself. I agree. Ruth was visibly sad. Poor Tess. She is rejected by her husband, whom she loves passionately. She was abused by rich, selfish Alec, Aurora insisted, her brow knotted in anger. Then he dumps her. And I know just how that feels, Danielle spat, to be rejected by a deceitful pig. Tess worked so hard on the land in all weathers, Jeannie said thoughtfully. She tries so hard to please everyone, but she's just ignored. Because she's a weak woman. Mark waved his copy of the book to prove that he was an authority. It's the natural order of things, men in charge, women subservient. Really, Mark? Verity's voice rose an octave. Are you actually serious? Oh, Tess has my full sympathy, Jeannie agreed. It's all work and no play. And then Alec comes along, and Ruth gasped, and he possesses her. We're not possessions, Aurora retorted angrily. Tess had little choice in the 19th century, but nowadays things have changed. We're free to decide for ourselves. Verity folded her arms. She has no chance against two rich, privileged, selfish men. You're missing the point. Mark raised a finger patronizingly. Men are in charge. Women are passive. That's how it's meant to be. Rubbish! Aurora yelled, leaping to her feet. Complete rubbish! You know exactly what I think, Verity said in a warning tone, about the sort of men who are all trousers and no substance. I agree, Danielle added enthusiastically. Wait! Ruth waved a hand, her expression desperate. The argument was rising to a peak, and she was anxious to calm the discussion. So, poor Tess, what could she have done to stop all this tragedy? If Tess were alive now, everyone, in turn, what would we advise her to do? Give up and let the men take over, Mark said simply. Kill all the men, Danielle offered grimly, or chop off their you-know-what. She's only a plaything, Mark shrugged. She doesn't matter. Verity glared at her husband. I'd advise her to look for a better partner. If Tess were here now, Aurora said with a flick of her hair, I'd tell her to go to London, have lots of lovers, buy new clothes, drink cocktails and enjoy life. She could get an education, Ruth insisted. She should certainly leave the drudgery behind her, start again. She's stuck in a huge rut. Jeannie paused, thinking about her own words. Yes, poor Tess is badly in need of a change. She should take a lover. She deserves some fun. Verity clapped her hands triumphantly. Or learn to read a good book, Ruth suggested. Danielle grunted. I still think she was right to kill Alec. He was nothing but a philanderer. I'd have killed him. But it's the natural order for a man to take the lead, Mark insisted. Not in our house. Verity gave a loud snort. Mark did not notice the just wait till we get home look, although Aurora smiled knowingly. Tess was a milkmaid, an exploited wife. No one really cared about her. Verity waved her book, almost hitting Mark with it. She was let down by the men she trusted. Then a male voice came from the doorway, calm and clear. I think there's another reason why she's called a pure woman. 6 faces turned to see a handsome man with curly hair leaning against the doorpost. He smiled. I think Hardy is commenting on negative Victorian values, hypocrisy, judgmentalism. The man's eyes moved sharply, meeting the others who gazed at him open-mouthed. Tess is a better human being than those who abuse her. That's probably as true about women now as it was in 1891 when the book was published. Well, Ruth gasped, her face flooding with relief. Well, indeed, Aurora raised an eyebrow. Welcome, come and sit down. Jeannie leaned forward. It's good to have a new face at the reading group. Mark folded his arms uncomfortably. And who might you be? Anthony Palmer. The man moved to the empty seat next to Ruth, stretching out long legs. I'm sorry I'm so late. I thought coming to your group might be a way to get to know people in the area. Oh, yes, it is definitely. Ruth was transfixed. It's so nice to have you join us. Are you an English teacher? You seem to know so much about the novel. Mark spluttered. I assume you're a visitor on holiday. No, not at all, Anthony grinned. I've moved into the village. My brother and I have bought an old cottage to renovate on the edge of Combe Pomeroy. I'm a builder. Ruth was delighted. Well, that's enough chatter about Tess for a while. Why don't we all have a nice tea break? It was past 10 as people began to leave the library reading room. Ruth waved a box of tea bags in the air. Won't you stay for another cup of tea? Anthony shook his head. I'd better be off, Ruth, but I'll pop into the library soon to collect that copy of Remembrance of Things Past. Yes, the Marcel Proust. I'll be waiting for you behind the counter, Ruth said, and immediately blushed. We need to go, Mark. I think we've discussed chauvinism enough for one night. Verity glowered at her husband. We both have a busy day tomorrow. Indeed we do. Mark turned to Ruth. We'll pass on the social bit, thanks. What's the next book club choice again? The Hunchback of Notre Dame, Ruth said hurriedly. Victor Hugo. I'll email you all to organise a time when we can meet in the next few weeks. I look forward to that. Anthony winked in the direction of Mark Wheatcroft. Plenty of opportunity for misogyny and anti-Zygonism. Jeannie raised a quizzical eyebrow as Anthony and the Wheatcrofts left. Ruth switched on the kettle. Tea? And sympathy, Danielle added. I'm going home to an empty house. Did I tell you Scott has moved in with this other woman? Aurora hugged her. This is the beginning of the rest of your wonderful life, darling. Here, here. Jeannie passed 3 mugs of tea and sipped her own. Barney and I are bottling the vintage cider first thing. It's going to be another busy day. Barney, Ruth said. I don't know how you can get on with him, Jeannie. He's so bad-tempered. He's lovely, really, Jeannie replied. Aurora inhaled steam from her mug. I adore this time of year at the cider farm. There's something so nice about being in the shop in the springtime. Jeannie agreed. Apple blossom time. It always fills me with a sense of optimism. Another year to follow the apples as they change to fruit, then juice, then cider. I don't feel optimistic, Danielle grunted, pulling out a tissue from her sleeve. Give it time, Aurora smiled encouragingly. You should go away next February or March, Jeannie. Take a cruise or something. You look exhausted, Ruth suggested. I might, once the twins are at university. Aurora laughed. They are perfectly self-sufficient. It would be more difficult to leave your mother. She's completely bonkers. She must be a constant worry for you, Ruth said anxiously. I wouldn't put anything past my mother, Jeannie smiled, but Barney keeps an eye on everything. Barney is a strange man. I feel uncomfortable around him, Ruth sighed. I find he can be quite rude. No, that's just how he is, straightforward, Jeannie said protectively. I don't really understand him at all, Ruth admitted. I suppose that's because we are so different. Aurora stretched out her arms. So, we're discussing The Hunchback next month, Ruth? I wanted to do The Colour Purple, Danielle said sadly. A story about a horrible, cheating husband. Oh, goodness me, Ruth gasped. Imagine the Wheatcrofts discussing that. Did you notice that Anthony rolled his eyes when I mentioned The Hunchback of Notre Dame? Misogyny and anti-what? Jeannie marvelled. Anti-Zygonism. Prejudice against Romany people, Ruth sighed. I expect Mark Wheatcroft will give poor Esmeralda a hard time. Maybe I should have picked something else. A book which won't bring out his chauvinistic side? Like the Mr. Men books? Aurora laughed. No, Ruth. You should go the whole hog and do 50 Shades of Grey. Or Lady Chatterley, Jeannie suggested. Perhaps another time? Ruth was misty-eyed. It's good to see a new face. Anthony seems very nice, so well read. Oh, he is, Aurora agreed. I'll definitely be looking out for some building work that needs doing at my house so that I can invite him round. I don't understand why Mark Wheatcroft says all those things to deliberately provoke Verity, Danielle mused. Verity doesn't seem the type who'd tolerate a bossy man. He has a good job in Bridgewater in a bank, and they live in that beautiful big house. She's really sweet. She's a potter. Her work is exquisite, Jeannie said thoughtfully. Danielle sighed. Perhaps they are completely different behind closed doors. People are. I can't understand why Verity puts up with his patriarchal views, Aurora said. Their son, Noah, is in the same year as the twins doing A-levels, Jeannie added. Noah often comes into the library. He's a lovely young man. Ruth began to pick up empty cups. Right, it's 10:30. We should all be going home. Are you walking back to the farm, Jeannie? Aurora asked. It's only a 10-minute stroll once I'm at the Combe Pomeroy sign, Jeannie said. I enjoy the journey back in the cool night air. We should all meet up. Aurora placed an arm around Danielle. A catch-up and a drink round my house next Saturday evening. I'm desperate to let my hair down. What do you think? Danielle closed her eyes. I'd really like that. Thanks. We'll text each other then, Jeannie agreed. We could probably all do with a night off. I'm looking forward to it already, Ruth sighed. You three are the only social life I have nowadays. I suppose that makes me sad. Aurora folded her arms. Then perhaps that should be the topic of our next conversation. She stared from Ruth to Danielle. Some of us need to get our lives back on track. Jeannie was still thinking about Aurora's words as she strolled towards the farm, the village behind her, shining the bright beam of her torch on the shadowy road ahead. She loved this time of night. It was almost 11 o'clock. The air was fresh, the hint of an icy bite in the wind. There were no cars on the road. Most lights in the village were out, and the sky took on the deep blackness of plush velvet. The sliver of a moon slid behind smudged clouds. There were no stars, just an endless stretch of darkness that ended in the looming outline of the hills in the distance. Jeannie inhaled the mellow fragrance of the night-time, an earthy musk from damp grass and wood, the floral scent of apple blossom on the air, light on the breeze. She was almost at the cider farm, her hands in her pockets, deep in thought. She could see the stone pillars of the drive, the outline of the sign. Golden apples clustered around the lettering, Sharrock Cider. Fragments of the evening's conversation still buzzed in Jeannie's mind, especially Aurora's comment about everyone's social lives needing a kickstart. Jeannie was wondering how life might be if she sold the cider farm and moved to a smaller place. There would be no worries about the year ahead, the apple harvest, sales of cider. There would be nothing but the luxurious stretch of time in which she could do as she wished, go for walks, take long holidays. She could spend quality time with her mother. She could, what did Aurora say? Get her life back on track. The idea that she would be the last Sharrock to own the farm troubled her momentarily, but things had to come to an end at some point. A holiday would be really nice. A cruise? She could go away for a whole month. Jeannie turned into the driveway of the farm, plodding forwards, her head crammed with crashing thoughts. What had she said about Tess during the discussion of the novel? All work and no play? Leave the drudgery behind? She pushed her hands deep into her bag and pulled out a set of keys. She had a lot to think about. She was arriving at a new stage in her life. Perhaps she was turning a corner, but she had no idea what to do once she had turned it. Suspended between habit and uncertainty, Jeannie had to admit too much hard work and no fun were making her dull. Chapter 4. Jeannie stood in Wellington boots in the orchard, deep in discussion with Barney. It was still early. The twins hadn't appeared for breakfast when she'd left the kitchen, and Violet was settled in her cushion-filled armchair in the conservatory, peering through half-moon glasses, reading a book. Outside, the sun was already warming the grass. A scent of damp, musky earth hung in the air. It was not yet 8 o'clock. Barney scratched his long whiskers and pushed his fingers inside the loop of baler twine.